All right, today we're diving into a framework for understanding our world that is, well, it's pretty mind-bending. It connects cosmic consciousness, of all things, directly to the institutions that shape our everyday lives. This is a wild ride, so seriously, buckle up.
So, the whole idea we're exploring today kicks off with this really powerful, kind of blunt diagnosis. The argument is that our traditional ways of finding meaning, religious and spiritual institutions, they're just not cutting it anymore. They're failing, and that's leaving this huge void. And this isn't just about what you believe, it's about a fundamental disconnect in how we're all living. So, if the old maps don't work anymore, where do you even start to look for a new one? That's really the central question being posed here. It's pushing us to look way beyond the usual political fixes and to consider a perspective that is, for real, cosmic in scale. Okay, so first things first. To really get a handle on this proposed cosmic solution, we have to understand the crisis it's trying to solve. And it's a crisis that's apparently happening on two fronts at the same time, and they're deeply connected. So here's the breakdown. On one side, you've got a spiritual crisis. Religious institutions are seen as failing, and spirituality often gets kind of watered down or trivialized. Then, on the other side, you have an ecological crisis. Our feeling of being separate from nature is leading us straight into an environmental catastrophe. The core argument, and this is key, is that these aren't two separate problems. They're actually two sides of the exact same coin, a deep systemic disconnection. So, with the problem laid out, we get to the foundation of this whole worldview. And just a heads up, this requires a pretty radical shift in how we usually think about consciousness itself. This chart really lays out the huge paradigm shift we're talking about. The conventional view, right, the one we all kind of grow up with, says consciousness is something that happens inside your brain. But this other view, sometimes called panpsychism, just flips that completely. It suggests that consciousness isn't some random biological accident, it's a fundamental property of the universe. In this view, matter isn't just dead stuff, it's an instrument for thought. Your mind isn't just in your head, it's embodied in the entire world around you. And that leads us right to this core concept of the embodied mind. Try to think of it like this. The world itself is thinking. The places, the objects, the whole ecosystem. It's all part of one giant cognitive process. And us? What are we in this picture? We're like mobile neurons, just moving through this massive environmental mind, witnessing and taking part in its thoughts. So, if the world is this giant thinking thing, then what's our purpose in it? Well, according to this framework, our purpose is to tune in, to literally become a receptive antenna for the underlying order and harmony of the cosmos, and then broadcast that harmony back out, influencing everything around us. Okay, so if an individual person can tune into the cosmos, what happens when you get a bunch of people together? Well, the idea is that consciousness also exists in groups. And this is the absolute key mechanism for making change on a large scale, the mind of the group. The source we're looking at uses a pretty specific term for this, an egregore. Just think of it as the collective consciousness or the group soul of any organization. A passionate startup, a diehard sports fan base, even an entire nation. Each one has its own unique egregore. It's the living, breathing personality of that group, and it's built from all the shared thoughts, feelings, and ideals of its members. Now, when one of these egregores forms around a formal institution, like a corporation or a government, it becomes this incredibly powerful shaping force. It embodies the group's mission, it reinforces all the unwritten rules of the culture, and it can even seem to take on a life of its own, guiding decisions in ways that no single person fully controls. It becomes the living library for the group's collective memory and identity. And look, this isn't just some weird abstract theory. The crucial point here is that these egregori, these group minds, are unbelievably powerful. They are the invisible forces that animate our most powerful institutions, and because of that, they end up shaping the very fabric of our society. Okay, so we've laid out a problem, this big disconnection, and a mechanism for change, the group mind. So the next logical question is, how do we actually use this? How can we apply this knowledge to start healing our world? The source calls this sociological alchemy, and that metaphor is totally intentional. You know how ancient alchemists tried to turn lead into gold? Well, the idea here is to do the same thing for society, to consciously transform the toxic, negative parts of our culture, the social dross, into something wholesome, productive, and valuable, the gold. So how's it supposed to work? Well, it's laid out as a kind of three-step process. First, you consciously work to spiritually enliven our systems. Things like social media, the internet, the economy, you inject them with life and positive energy. Second, you charge the symbols of our culture, company logos, works of art, the media we consume. You imbue them with positive, uplifting ideals. And the final step is transmutation, using these enlivened systems and charged symbols to actually transform our toxic social environment into one of quality, health, and excellence. And let's be clear, the ambition here is, well, it's huge. This isn't about making a few small tweaks here and there. The goal of sociological alchemy is a total transformation. It's about a complete purification of our collective consciousness, moving from all that social dross to a society that is pure, productive gold. So, if this all worked, if this alchemical transformation of society actually happened, where does that leave us? What's the end game here? This brings us to the final, and maybe the most profound piece of the vision. The source speculates that this whole process could lead to, and this is a big one, the emergence of a whole new kind of human being. Sometimes it's called Homo egregori. This would be a person who is naturally tuned in to the collective consciousness, someone capable of operating from a much higher, more integrated state of awareness. But the most important part here, the real takeaway, is that this isn't something that just happens to us. We are active participants. This quote puts it perfectly. We are co-evolving along with the surrounding context of our own creative designs. As we change our environment, as we redesign our institutions and our symbols, we are, at the very same time, changing ourselves. We are literally co-evolving with the world that we are creating. And so after this whole journey through cosmic consciousness and group minds and social alchemy, it all comes full circle, right back to you. It leaves us with a final, very personal question. Are you just an endpoint, passively receiving all the chaotic noise of the world? Or are you actively choosing to become an antenna, tuning in and broadcasting a clearer, more harmonious signal out into the cosmos?